Okay, and speaking of that rainfall, last April, we actually had a record-breaking when it came to that heavy storms, more frequent storms. And of course, that means flood risk is something that every resident needs to think about. MSD Project Clear is working to help people better understand that risk through its Know Your Zone initiative. Joining us live, we have Nicole Spencer to explain what that means, why everyone in the region is actually in a flood zone. Thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having us this morning.
So it really, I couldn't think of a better time to have this conversation. We're talking about rain, we're talking about flooding on the ferry. What does it mean to know your zone?
Knowing your zone simply means knowing what kind of flood zone you live in. Everyone in the St. Louis region does live in a flood zone, so we want people to visit knowyourzone.org to learn which flood zone they live in, and then they can decide for themselves from there if they need something like flood insurance to protect themselves from those heavy rain events.
And what I like about what people might not realize in what you're saying here is everyone's at risk of flooding in St. Louis.
Yeah, there's a big misconception out there that if you don't live next to like a river, creek, or stream, that you don't have any risk. But like you said, everyone lives in a flood zone. It's either a high, moderate, or low risk flood zone. And actually, the recent statistics say that 1 out of 3 of those flood insurance claims comes from an area that isn't high risk. So we want people to break that misconception, understand that they are definitely still at risk, and do what they need to do to take action.
So when it comes to that, let's say we've gone to the website, we're kind of understanding our zone, what risk we are. What would some of those next steps look like to protect yourself?
Yeah, so we have lots of resources on our website to direct people to. I think it's important to remember that MSD is not a flood agency, not a flood authority, but we recognize that a lot of our customers turn to us when there are these heavy rain events. So there's resources on the website directing them to things like FEMA, the National Flood Insurance Program. They can visit those resources to get information, to actually do an estimate for flood insurance if that's something they choose to do so. But lots of information out there to help keep our customers safe.
And why is this something that is so important to you all? I think especially, I've only been living in St. Louis for 4 years, but when I moved here, I realized, wow, a lot of this city does flood.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've seen so much more heavy rain events over time. There used to be those terms like 100-year rain events, 500-year rain events, but they're happening every day, every year now. So the storm system that we have at MSD, there's no storm system in the entire world that could handle the amount of rain we've been seeing lately. So it can't handle that much rain. And when it can't handle that much rain, the rain has to go somewhere. And unfortunately, that's when overland flooding happens, and that's when people end up in difficult situations.
Yeah, it is. It's a very rainy city.
Yes.
That's what I noticed. I was like, wow, rain again. But of course, what I love about what you're doing is you're recognizing, okay, it is raining, we have to take those precautions. So please just remind us again how easy it is to find further resources.
Yeah, visit knowyourzone.org. On that webpage, there's lots of information. Like I mentioned, there's an interactive flood zone kit where people can enter their address and find out exactly which kind of flood zone they live in, and then explore some of those resources to get more assistance.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for joining us.
Thank
I couldn't
you.
think of a better time than to have this conversation right now. We're getting into that storm season, everyone. Knowyourzone.org. Take a look at it, learn more about where you are, know the risks, and of course, learn further information about how to keep yourself safe.